All right. What's up, everybody? Got another great webinar for you tonight.
Oh, yes, as we always do.
This one has just been a very hot topic. Very important information.
Absolutely. There's a total of 1,041 people registered for this webinar. It's kind of a big deal. Maybe one of our highest registering webinars total. We got 48 people live. You want to launch that poll, Robbie?
Absolutely. If you're living with diabetes, we'd love to know. You can also write in the chat box if you're living with fatty liver. If you have been diagnosed with that condition, let us know in the chat box. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so today's webinar is actually one of my favorite topics of all because fatty liver is very misunderstood, and there's a lot of misleading information that is not evidence-based in the world of diabetes as a whole, but definitely in the world of fatty liver. So we kind of want to cut to the chase here and give you guys some information about what is fatty liver, what causes it, and how do you reverse it. We also had we hosted this webinar 2 weeks ago, and I'll take full responsibility. We had some serious AV issues, so we're redoing it again today, and we made the presentation even better. So it's going to be we're going to have a good time.
I have two people writing in the chat box, no audio, but I see I'm getting several people saying no audio. That's weird because other people are answering our questions. So if you're having audio issues, try leaving and coming back in.
Yeah, if you can hear us, write the word yes in the chat box. If you cannot hear us, write the word no. Because, yeah, there's I hear audio.
Yeah.
Yes, all good. Okay, cool. I don't think there's any AV issues. Yes. Good. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
All right, let's check this poll. So we got a total of what? 184 people live, which is awesome. 50% of you have type 2. About 20% don't have diabetes. And about 15% of you have prediabetes. So it looks like we have basically 65% of the audience with prediabetes or type 2. And then 20% that doesn't have any.
Totally.
Very interesting. Okay, so also in the chat box, if you can tell us where you're from. So list, tell us what type of diabetes you have and where you are from. We'd love to see. We generally have a pretty international audience, so it's always cool to see where people are from.
I saw somebody say hi from Malaysia in the chat box in the beginning, so that's awesome to see you joining us from so far away. India, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Wow. Los Angeles, all right. Hey, if you're living in Los Angeles, I hope to see you at the LA Hollywood Farmers Market this Sunday. I'm there early, 8 a.m. I'll be there.
New Mexico, Northern California, Denver, Pennsylvania, Seattle, type 2, Michigan, Davenport, Philadelphia suburbs, Washington, D.C. Very cool, very cool, very cool.
Some Orange County in there. Ontario, Canada.
Lots of people from all over the place.
Absolutely, everywhere.
Cool. All right, so we got 209 people. What do you think? Should we start this bad boy up?
Go ahead, let's start it.
All right, I'm going to end that poll, and then we can get started. So people are going to be continuing to trickle in as time goes on. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then we can get into the fun. How's my screen look? Can you see it?
That's great. Full screen looks wonderful.
Okay. All right. So today's topic, as you guys know, is all about fatty liver. So we're going to be talking about what causes fatty liver, what sets the stage for it, what foods cause it, what foods reverse it, and how do you actually get rid of it, because it can be a pain in the butt. And most importantly, we're going to talk about the connection between fatty liver and insulin resistance and high cholesterol, because they're all related. So here's what we'll cover. What is fatty liver disease and what foods cause it? Number one. Number two, why fatty liver causes insulin resistance and how that elevates your blood glucose, your cholesterol, and your triglyceride. Number three, why low carbohydrate diets actually cause fatty liver disease. That is the problem. Number 4, what's the deal with statin medications? And then number 5, how can you reverse fatty liver using your diet? Because it's possible, I'll tell you that, but we got to do it in a very specific manner. And we highly recommend staying until the end because we always have some fun bonuses for you guys. And we got a new bonus this week that we've never offered before. So if you want to take advantage of that bonus, you got to be here at the end. No question. All right, here's my quick story. I think a lot of you guys probably know me. If you don't know me, my name is Cyrus. I was diagnosed with 3 autoimmune conditions in my senior year of college. So I was 22 years old. And, I've been an athlete my whole life, thought I was eating healthy. And within a 6-month span, I developed Hashimoto's thyroiditis or hypothyroidism, alopecia, and type 1 diabetes at the same time. So within a 6-month period, my health went from what I thought was good to terrible, and I was very confused. So my doctors told me to eat a low carbohydrate diet because that's the one-size-fits-all prescription for all people with diabetes. So they said, here, eat these foods: cheese, butter, eggs, bacon, meat, and eat small amounts of fruits and eat small amounts of carbohydrate-containing foods like bread. And I said, cool, that's exactly what I want to do because I like those foods. Great. So I did it. And the goal was to make my blood glucose more controllable, but it did the exact opposite. My glucose was all over the place. I was on the roller coaster, and it was a painful process. And my blood glucose meter was acting like a random number generator. I literally had no idea what number was going to appear at any given moment in time. So as a result of that, I became frustrated. I lost a lot of energy, and I became very depressed. The worst part, the icing on the cake for me, was that I couldn't be as active as I wanted to be. And I'm an athlete. I grew up as an athlete, playing soccer, playing baseball, weightlifting. And when my movement got restricted, I got really frustrated. So under the guidance of a nutrition pro, I changed my diet because the low carbohydrate diet clearly wasn't working. So I started eating foods like you see on the screen here: colorful fruits, vegetables, 100% plants. I got rid of all animal-based products because I had a sinking suspicion that I was doing things incorrectly. So I transitioned to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, and this is what happened. My carbohydrate intake took a giant increase. It went from about 125 grams per day all the way upwards of 600 grams per day in a short period of time. My fat intake followed the red. So my carbohydrate was in blue, went way up. My fat intake went from approximately 80-ish grams per day all the way down to between 10 and 20 grams per day. I didn't know what was going to happen to my insulin use. I was terrified that it was going to do the blue thing and it was going to go up. But instead, my insulin use fell by 43% in the first 3 weeks. So I was eating more carbohydrate for less insulin. Something was very interesting in this situation. I didn't know what it was. What I did notice was that my fat and insulin were tracking together. So the less fat I was eating, the less insulin I needed. And to me, that was fascinating because nobody had told me that they were connected. So the linear diabetes model says this: eat less carbohydrate, have less blood glucose, use less insulin. This did not hold true because I was not eating less carbohydrate. I was eating more carbohydrate here, and then I was getting less insulin and less blood glucose. So something about this model just didn't make any sense. So I went back to school. I studied at UC Berkeley for 5 years. I got a PhD in nutritional biochemistry. And there I was able to read everything under the sun about insulin resistance and try and understand what the heck it is. And I wrote a thesis, my PhD thesis, on the causes of insulin resistance and how you can actually eliminate it using your diet and using your lifestyle. So here I am 15 years later after I was initially diagnosed in 2002. I've reduced my insulin use by 40%. I eat almost 1,000 grams of carbohydrate per day. That is not a typo. That is per day. And I inject about 25 units of insulin per day. So my insulin sensitivity is high, is extremely high. It's greater than 30 units, 30 grams per unit on a daily basis. And my A1C values are between 5.4 and 5.7. So my glucose is controlled, my carbohydrate intake is up, and my insulin use is down. And I'm a pretty happy dude.
Okay, my name is Robbie Baldero. I got feedback. Hope you don't have feedback. Some people know me on Instagram, on social media, as Mindful Diabetic Robbie, where I love to share my lifestyle. So I was also diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, like Cyrus. I was 12 at the time, and I was following the standard American diet. While doing that, I had to take allergy medications all year long. I had terrible acne, and I suffered from plantar fasciitis, which is a very uncomfortable pain in your feet. So I wore these blue boots at night, which is uncomfortable. So, of course, similar to Cyrus, you start learning what your doctors tell you to do. You start Googling, and eventually you come across a low-carbohydrate diet. So that's what I tried to improve my situation, and I became a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. I was avoiding fruit because it was high in sugar. Instead, I was getting my energy from grass-fed beef and raw milk and stuff like that. So eventually I learned some more, like this isn't working. I started Googling, learned some more, find a low carb plant-based diet. So this is where, again, I had to avoid fruit. I was eating mostly nuts, some olive oil, lots of greens, but I suffered from terribly low energy and I almost blacked out several times on campus. It was getting pretty scary. So at this point, I've been to my naturopath, I've done all kinds of things. I feel like I've tried a lot. And I'm still not finding solutions, not feeling well. And I was told next thing to try would be chelation therapy. It was going to be expensive. I'd have to drive very far. But I was at a point where I'll do anything. It was like in desperation mode. And luckily, I found a mentor who taught me about low-fat, plant-based eating. And I signed up for his coaching program. It was 3 months of coaching and absolutely changed my life. It was incredible. So I learned how I could eat fruit. All of a sudden, my insulin sensitivity, just like Cyrus, went through the roof. I could eat all this fruit, and I'm taking less and less insulin. It's like, what's going on? So my insulin sensitivity was improving dramatically, and I was going to eat new fruits. I didn't even know what a persimmon was back then, but now I sure do. So now it's over 10 years later of eating nothing but fruits and vegetables. I've had A1Cs ranging from 5.7 to 6.6. And I'm active every day. I feel amazing. And I just love sharing this with other people. And I can't wait for you guys to learn from tonight's presentation.
Fantastic. All right. So here's what we're going to go over today. A lot of things. But the first question I want to ask is, what is fatty liver? And most importantly, what causes fatty liver? Because it's not that straightforward. It is straightforward from the biology perspective, but it's not that straightforward from an internet search on Google. Okay, so here's something to think about. Your liver is, without doubt, the hardest working tissue in your body. There is no question about it. Your liver performs more metabolic reactions per second than any other tissue in your body. More than your brain, more than your heart, more than your muscle tissue, more than your thyroid gland, more than your kidney. There's no tissue in your body that comes even close to as many chemical reactions as your liver every second of every day of your life. So what does that mean? Your liver performs a number of metabolic functions that are very important for regulating your glucose metabolism and your cholesterol. The first thing that your liver does is it stores glucose. It also produces glucose when necessary. It drops glucose back into your blood to make sure that your brain has an adequate supply at all times. Your liver is also responsible for making fatty acids. So it actually secretes fatty acids into your blood. It also clears fatty acids out of your blood. So in the same way that glucose is a two-way mechanism, your liver stores glucose and produces it. Your liver also stores fatty acids and manufactures them and secretes them. In the same way, your liver also manufactures or releases cholesterol, and it stores cholesterol. It pulls it out of the blood to protect tissues against cholesterol overload. Your liver also manufactures this stuff called bile, and bile is necessary because it helps you digest fat-rich and protein-rich foods. Without bile, you would not be able to eat fat and protein-rich foods. Your liver is responsible for making bile. Your liver also detoxifies drugs, meaning that If you take an Advil or you take metformin, these drugs do not last forever. Over the course of time, they are detoxified and they are broken down into water-soluble compounds. Your liver is responsible for that process. Your liver also clears red blood cells out of circulation. So red blood cells that have died or red blood cells that are old get cleared out of your blood by your liver. Your liver also takes care of all amino acid metabolism. That's everything related to protein metabolism. Very complicated. Your liver also produces this stuff called urea. That's what makes your pee yellow. That's an ongoing process that happens 24 hours a day. Your liver also metabolizes alcohol. So when you drink a glass of wine or you have a beer, that alcohol gets into your blood and makes you feel a little bit loopy. Your liver degrades that alcohol and breaks it down into water-soluble compounds and gets rid of it so that you don't stay drunk forever. So take a look at all these functions on the screen. This is just the icing on the cake as far as your liver is concerned. And the beauty is that your liver is doing every single one of these every single second of every single day. So if you haven't given your liver a hug recently, please do, because it is the hardest working tissue in your entire body. So because your liver does so much work, because your liver stores glucose and gets rid of it, because your liver stores cholesterol and gets rid of it, because your liver stores fatty acids and gets rid of it, your liver is basically it's a shield. It protects tissues all throughout your body, and it allows tissues all throughout your body to function normally. First and foremost, your liver protects your brain. There's no question about it. If your liver is altered in its function, your brain cannot operate properly. If your liver is altered in its function, your muscles get pissed off. If your liver does not function properly, your heart takes a beating. If your liver does not function properly, your vasculature goes out of whack. If your liver does not function properly, your kidney gets damaged. If your liver does not function properly, your adipose tissue gets damaged. Okay? So the fuel that goes into your mouth is reflected. Let me put it this way. The fuel inside of your liver is reflected by the fuel that goes inside of your mouth. So you can really think of it as though the macronutrient proportions of your diet, your carbohydrate to fat to protein ratio, is really what determines the carbohydrate to fat to protein ratio inside of your liver. So what do I mean by that? Okay, suppose you eat a diet that's high in fruits and vegetables, okay, and it's also high, okay, and it's all being a low-fat, plant-based, whole foods diet, just like we recommend, and you end up deriving the bulk of your calories from the foods that you see on the screen. In this situation, you end up with fuel being stored as you see here. You end up with a significant amount of glucose inside of your liver. You end up with small amounts of cholesterol inside of your liver and small amounts of fatty acids, okay? You might ask yourself, well, wait a minute. The foods that I see on the screen here, they don't contain cholesterol. So what's going on here? There's no cholesterol in fruits and vegetables. There's no cholesterol in beans. There's no cholesterol in whole grains. So why are there 2 red circles on my liver? Okay. Well, it turns out that your liver actually manufactures its own cholesterol. So everybody has a liver that manufactures cholesterol. It's part of the metabolic reactions that occur inside of it. And when you allow your liver to manufacture its own cholesterol and distribute that cholesterol to tissues all throughout your body, which is a totally normal and physiological function, then your liver is capable of conducting that whole symphony. The problem arises when you overload your liver with too much cholesterol from your diet. So in this situation, again, we're deriving most of our energy from carbohydrate sources, from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And as a result of that, we're ending up storing most of the fuel inside of the liver is blue, which is glucose, and then small amounts are red and small amounts are yellow. Now, if instead you ate a diet that looked more like this, you had some red meat, you had some chicken, you had some salmon, you had some dairy products, and you had some eggs. So maybe you're eating like a paleo-ish diet, or maybe you're eating more of a standard American diet, or maybe you're eating a ketogenic diet, okay? As a result of this, the fuel inside of your liver is now going to be affected. So as a result of this, there's less blue, right? the foods that you're consuming have less glucose inside of them. There's no glucose inside of meat, red meat or white meat. There's no glucose inside of fish. There's small amounts of glucose inside of dairy products, and there's no glucose inside of eggs. So as a result of that, since there's no glucose coming into your mouth, then your liver, the only glucose that it's going to keep is the glucose that it can manufacture itself. At the same time, there's more fatty acids shown in the yellow, and there's more cholesterol shown in red, because the fatty acids and cholesterol came from the food that you see on the screen. So fatty liver disease is really a progression of multiple stages. So when you start out with a healthy liver, okay, a healthy liver can then progress to a fatty liver. And the reason it becomes a fatty liver is, as the name indicates, it's because there are deposits of fat which lead to a liver enlargement. So not only does your liver actually accumulate fat inside of it intracellularly, but your liver actually gets larger. Okay, it can grow by 2, 3, 5% in size, which is kind of a big deal, because when your liver is fully formed, it's not designed to actually become larger unless it has no choice but to suck up too much fat coming from your mouth. So after you develop fatty liver, it can then progress into what's called liver fibrosis, at which you have scar tissue that's beginning to form as your liver is starting to lose its overall function. And then when liver fibrosis progresses, you end up with what's called liver cirrhosis. And liver cirrhosis, think of this as like end stage liver disease. And this is where connective tissue has started to grow inside of your liver, and your liver basically loses its overall function. If you develop liver cirrhosis, the only way to recover from this is via a liver transplant. Okay, so our goal is to try and basically stop the process at fatty liver. And if you have been diagnosed with a fatty liver, or if you're on your way to a fatty liver, find a way to turn it back into a healthy liver. Okay, because again, once you get into fibrosis and cirrhosis, you're ending up with very, very challenging conditions that are very difficult to reverse. So fatty liver disease is caused by the accumulation of excess fat in your liver, resulting from a diet that's high in fat and high in cholesterol. So I want you guys to understand one thing, and one thing only, that Robbie and I do not advocate a zero fat diet. We do not tell you to stop eating all fat. That is not possible. What we're trying to educate you guys about is that there's a fundamental difference between eating a small, physiologically relevant amount of fat and then consuming excess fat. So that's why I put this in bold here, because really the problem is not about fat per se as much as it is an overload of fat or an excess quantity of fat going into your mouth. Okay? So insulin resistance is caused by the storage of fat in tissues that are not designed to store fat. You guys know this because I drill this into I put this slide up every single webinar. And if you haven't written this down and stuck it on your fridge yet, then please do that. Okay? So take a look at this. Fatty liver is caused by the excess accumulation of fat in your liver, and insulin resistance is caused by the excess accumulation of fat in your liver and your muscle. So what that means is that fatty liver and insulin resistant liver are the same thing. Okay? So again, in an insulin sensitive liver, you got a lot of blue and a small amount of yellow and a small amount of red. In an insulin resistant or fatty liver, which is synonymous, you end up with less blue and more red and more yellow. So what we're trying to do is basically reverse. We're trying to go from this stage over here on the right back to this stage over here on the left. So we want to figure out how can we replace the yellows and the reds, the fatty acids and the cholesterol, with more blue, more glucose, because there's a very, very simple way to do that. And this process takes time, and it takes a lot of consistency. So here's the next question. Okay, fine. We've established that fatty liver is caused by the accumulation of excess fat in tissues that are not designed to store fat, namely your liver. But why does that affect your glucose, your cholesterol, and your triglycerides? Okay, what's the connection there? Okay, so when you're eating a diet that contains a lot of meat and or fish and or dairy and or eggs, you end up with the picture shown here. Okay, now your fat, your liver is, because it has accumulated a significant amount of red and yellow, again, cholesterol and fatty acids, at a certain point, your liver gets annoyed. And your liver basically says, all right, I can't continue to take this stuff up forever. I mean, I have like a finite capacity for being able to store more fat and more cholesterol, and I get assaulted every single time you open your mouth. And I'm going to do my best to store it so I can protect other tissues from storing it. But at a certain point, your liver gets angry, and your liver basically says, you know what? I'm going to start secreting it back into the blood. So here's what it does. Here's your vasculature. Okay. The first thing that your liver will do in this situation is your liver will start increasing the amount of cholesterol that it drops into your blood. Because again, there's more cholesterol coming into your liver than it was originally designed for. And as a result of it, your liver says, all right, I'm fed up. Let's get rid of this stuff. So it over secretes cholesterol into your blood, which then leads to an increase in your total cholesterol level and especially your LDL cholesterol. So now you have elevated LDL cholesterol, which increases your risk for heart disease. Number two, your liver starts to get angry and says, all right, I'm going to get rid of some of this stored fatty acids as well. Because again, I can hold on to some of it, but I'm not going to hold on to all of it. So it starts to dump fatty acids into your blood. And when it does this, your triglyceride level now goes up. So now you have elevated cholesterol and you have elevated triglycerides at the same time. The third thing your liver does, is that your liver also says, you know what? I don't have that much blue inside of me. I don't have that much glucose. However, I am going to increase the rate at which I am dumping glucose into the blood. And that's just think of it as like an inconvenient side effect of a fatty liver. So your liver definitely does store some glucose for sure. And through a process called gluconeogenesis, which is basically the synthesis of glucose from non-glucose precursors, your liver can basically take protein that comes from your diet and convert that protein and those amino acids into glucose. So now you end up secreting a bunch of blue or a bunch of glucose into your blood as well. So this is a problem because now you have hypercholesterolemia, which is elevated elevated cholesterol. So your LDL cholesterol went up, your triglyceride also went up, and now your glucose is also going up. So that's a problem because now your blood basically is the storage vehicle for so many excess nutrients, and that's why your levels of all three of those go up. So in this scenario, now you have a lot of cholesterol, fatty acids, and glucose in your blood. So your pancreas gets involved, and your pancreas says, all right, well, I can solve one of these problems. What if I just made some more insulin? So your pancreas starts to make more insulin, and the purpose of that insulin is to basically take the blue or the glucose out of your blood, because the more insulin that appears, the more glucose can escape out of your blood and go into your muscles. So your pancreas gets involved and starts to make more green or more insulin. And as a result of this, you now become what's called hypercholesterolemic, which means elevated LDL cholesterol. You become hyperlipidemic, which means that you have elevated triglycerides. You become hyperglycemic, which means you have more glucose. And you become hyperinsulinemic, which means you have excess insulin. So this is a not single, not double, not triple, but quadruple whammy that all started because your liver started accumulating too much fatty acids and too much cholesterol. So you might ask yourself, well, okay, what's the big deal with glucose export? Okay, my liver is going to be dumping glucose into the blood at all times. Okay, here's what happens. If your liver over secretes glucose into your blood, you end up with increased fasting glucose, increased post-meal glucose, increased blood glucose variability, meaning that your glucose on a day-to-day basis is fluctuating all over the place in the same way that mine fluctuated back in the day before when I was consuming a low carbohydrate diet. And then on top of that, you also have increased insulin concentrations like we were just talking about. So you end up with a whole bunch of frustrating consequences that happen directly to your glucose metabolism. Okay, so then you might ask yourself a simple question. You might be like, well, this is ridiculous. How come my fasting blood glucose is elevated, right? Your fasting glucose is elevated because your liver is constantly manufacturing glucose and dumping it into your blood. Okay, and again, this all occurred because your liver is suffering not from too much glucose in your diet, not from too much carbohydrate, from too much fatty acids. Okay, fatty acid sets the stage. Blood glucose is the effect. Okay, so why is cholesterol export a problem? Here's why. When your liver dumps a bunch of cholesterol into your blood, you end up with all of these problems. number one, you have what's called more VLDL, which is the precursor to LDL. So you end up with more LDL, which means that you end up with more arterial plaque, which means that you end up with a higher risk for hypertension, and you have a higher need for statin medication. Okay, if you have even slightly elevated cholesterol, you go to your doctor. Your doctor is likely to tell you that you want to get onto a statin medication, and a lot of them will put you onto a high-intensity statin medication protocol. And then you also end up with what's called an increased risk for all-cause mortality, which is premature death from any cause. So simply by having too much cholesterol floating in your blood, you end up at a higher risk for chronic disease and a higher risk for death. That's a problem. So then you might ask yourself, well, how come my doctor keeps telling me that I have to be on statin medication? And the reason is because your liver is suffering from an overload of cholesterol. And again, this cholesterol came from your diet. Third question, why is fatty acid export a problem? When your liver oversecretes fatty acids into your blood, you end up with, number one, increased triglycerides. Number two, increased risk for arterial plaque and atherosclerosis. Number three, increased risk for hypertension. Number four, increased risk for cardiovascular disease, just like we saw with cholesterol. And number five, increased risk for premature death or all-cause mortality. Okay, so more lipids do a very similar task as more cholesterol, which is that it decreases your longevity and increases your risk for death. So then you might ask yourself a question, well, how come my triglyceride level are chronically elevated? And how come my doctor keeps telling me that I need to go on a statin medication to get my cholesterol medication or my cholesterol level down, right? Again, because your liver is suffering from fatty acid overload. Too much fatty acid in your blood causes elevated triglyceride levels, which then increases your risk for chronic disease. Okay, so by now, I hope you guys understand that, you know, the stage was set when you started consuming foods that are high in fat and high in cholesterol, and then it causes your liver to start doing a whole bunch of abnormal things. And as a result of those abnormal things, now your risk for high cholesterol and hypertriglyceridemia and high blood glucose and high insulin becomes very prevalent. So you might ask yourself a simple question: what are the short-term and long-term effects of low carbohydrate diets? Okay. Now, this is something that I really, really, really want to focus on, and this is going to be something that I'm going to keep saying over and over and over again. The reason that many people and medical professionals love low carbohydrate diets is because in the short term, they lead to a number of metabolic improvements like weight loss, decreased glucose variability, reduced A1C value, reduced insulin use, reduced cholesterol, reduced triglycerides. So everything that I just showed you on the screen about too much cholesterol and too much fatty acids, that happens in the long term, generally. In the short term, you can actually end up with improvements. And that's why doctors love them, and that's why people love them, because as soon as they go onto a low carbohydrate diet, boom, you lose 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds. And you end up decreasing your glucose and decreasing your lipids. Who doesn't want that? That means things are moving in the right direction. However, those are all short-term effects. In the long term, low carbohydrate diets significantly increase your risk for chronic disease. What kind of chronic disease? Here's what: heart disease, hypertension, high cholesterol, triglycerides, increased risk for atherosclerosis. Okay. Another thing that happens is that you end up with an increased level of insulin resistance, increased fatty liver, okay, increased risk for diabetes. You end up with more inflammation, increased risk for kidney failure, increased risk for cancer, because cancer is an inflammatory condition. You end up with weight gain. You end up with low energy, impaired digestion, and food cravings. Okay, so I'm going to stop the presentation here for just 1 second, and I want to go to the chat box, and I want to see, given what you see on the screen here, okay, things like inability to lose weight, impaired digestion, food cravings, low energy, increased risk for heart disease, increased risk for diabetes and associated conditions. If you have followed a low carbohydrate diet and you have experienced some of these conditions, please write in the chat box, tell us what you have experienced, because I want to know. This stuff is very important, and this stuff happens all the time. And it's very important to understand that, you know, you can control practically every single one of these symptoms simply by changing the food that goes into your mouth. So again, go to the chat box and tell me what has happened to you on a low carbohydrate diet. We'll come back to that in a sec. Okay, in the chat box, here's what I see. I see food cravings, inability to lose weight. Okay, Teresa says, not all carbohydrates are the same. How about whole food, gluten-free? Okay, all of the above. Okay, how pain in my liver from John. Okay, weight gain, inability to lose weight from Laura. Okay, great. Fatty liver, weight gain, low energy, insulin resistance from Camille, inability to lose weight, low energy, low energy, low energy. Okay, food cravings, hypertension, diabetes, total body inflammation, increased LDL, cravings, food cravings and inflammation from Yvette. Sue Ellen says inability to lose weight, fatty liver, cholesterol, overweight, diabetes from Maria. Okay, I think you guys start to see the commonality here, right? You know, these low carbohydrate diets, whether it's an Atkins diet or a ketogenic diet or a paleo diet, they cause serious problems. And you can look at the chat box and you can see from other people just like yourself, this is what happens over the course of time. Okay, so I'm not going to say that I'm happy that you're experiencing these symptoms, because I'm not happy about it. But it is common, it is true, and it is just plain biology. Okay, the biology that we have been taught about low carbohydrate diets is backwards. It is backwards. It is not evidence-based, and it is completely falsified. So I want to help you guys understand that most of these conditions that you're writing here, inflammation, inability to lose weight, high triglycerides, food cravings, low energy, all of this stuff can be reversed. And we ought to just change the food that you put in your mouth. Okay, so let's go back to my presentation. See my screen?
We sure can. Your screen looks great.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go here. So here's what I've highlighted in red. If you guys noticed, I stuck fatty liver right there in the middle. Low carbohydrate diet significantly increase your risk for fatty liver. This webinar is about fatty liver. Okay. If you're living with fatty liver, chances are it may have happened from either a standard American diet or a low carbohydrate diet. That is very important to understand. Okay. Let's talk about statins. Statins are a pain in the butt. Statins are incredibly effective. They lower your cholesterol, but in the long term, they cause some serious problems. I like to think of them as classic Band-Aids, right? You can wear a Band-Aid for a little while and it'll work, and then a Band-Aid will stop working. Okay, so there are many papers that are written about statin medications and why they are either effective or not effective. And here's a perfect example of a paper that was written by researchers in India to try and determine whether or not statins are actually safe in the long term. In this paper, here's what they list. These are side effects of statin medications. Side effects. The list is unbelievably long. You guys have probably seen those pharmaceutical company commercials where they say side effects include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, gas, bloating, skin irritation, and then they get to these ridiculous conditions and they say, please consult your physician if you have been constipated for more than 7 days, or if you experience dizziness or fainting. And it just goes on and on and on. And you sit here and you think to yourself, what's the point? It doesn't make any sense, because if I take a medication, I can end up with anything here, right? And the ones that I highlighted in red are things like stroke, hemorrhagic stroke. This can kill you. Peripheral neuropathy. This is lightning bolts in your peripheral nerves. Cognitive impairment. This is an inability to think properly. Brain fog, right? Cancer risk. You kidding me? You take statins and you end up with a higher risk for cancer? That doesn't make sense. Okay, erectile dysfunction for men. Okay, and I just went through a small number of these things. There's a whole long list of these things. Okay, here's another question, or here's another paper. Right, statins increase your risk for diabetes. What? How can that possibly be the case? Well, this one paper shows. This is a paper that basically is a meta-analysis. So basically, this is a paper that goes through and analyzes the data from many other trials. So they're analyzing all these trials, and they're basically saying, this is what we found by the majority of all the trials that we've seen. And they said that they had identified more than 174 cases of diabetes in the groups that they had studied, which indicated that by taking a statin medication, your risk for type 2 diabetes increases by almost 10%. Okay? So if you want to increase your risk for type 2 diabetes, go ahead, use a statin medication. Okay, another paper, another meta-analysis that identified similar studies, but also different studies, found that your risk for diabetes increases by 12%. So it's a slight difference, but the fact of the matter is both of these found that you take statin medications to control your cholesterol, you end up increasing your risk for diabetes. In my mind, it's not worth it. Okay? So here's a simple question. How can you reverse fatty liver using your diet? Okay, do you guys, in the chat box, here's what I want you guys to think about. I want you to answer a simple question. Do you think it's possible to reverse fatty liver using your diet? Okay, you just give me a yes or no, because I know the answer, and I think I know what you guys are going to write in the chat box, but tell me what you think. You think it's possible? Robbie, what do you see in the chat box?
I see a flood of yeses. It's just yes after yes after yes. There's a hope so. Somebody says yes, whole food diet.
No.
Somebody says hell yeah.
Is there anybody that says no?
I honestly don't think they're coming in very fast, so it's hard to read all of them, but I don't think I saw a no. There's a very smart people in the audience. Okay, guys, how do you do it? Low fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition. You knew it was coming, but here it is. We're going to deliver the message loud and clear. These colorful, delicious foods, these are the foods that reverse fatty liver and allow you to enjoy your food, love your food, and get healthy. So we have a coaching program where we teach people how to make this lifestyle change. It's actually very simple, but we totally understand that this simple thing is actually quite complicated in our everyday society and everything that's going on, how busy we are. So I'm going to go through some details real quick here about exactly what foods do we eat on a healthy, low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. So we've broken it up into 3 categories: green light, yellow light, and red light. So the green light foods, these are foods that you can literally eat essentially as much as you want. I mean, of course, there's some exceptions, and you could eat any, you could like make yourself sick. But in general, these foods are so high in water content and fiber that you can sit down and eat as much as you want, eat to your heart's content. So these include fruits, non-starchy vegetables, so that's like cauliflower, zucchini, eggplant, starchy vegetables like potatoes, yams, squashes. Eat those in unlimited amounts. Beans, lentils, and peas. These are the foods that the longest lived people on the planet eat. Green leafy vegetables, we're talking, lettuce, Swiss chard, arugula. That stuff is great. Intact whole grains. So the key word there is intact. These are whole grains in their true whole form. And then herbs and spices. Those are all green light foods. Now, the yellow light category, these are foods you want to have a limited amount of. You do not want to sit down and eat as much as you want of these. This will cause a problem. So nuts, seeds, avocados, coconuts, olives, these are high-fat plant foods. They're still part of a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, but you got to eat them in moderation. These are very calorie-dense and high in fat, which is what we're trying to avoid here. That's how we're reversing fatty liver, by not eating a bunch of fat. So pastas, those can be okay. So like a brown rice pasta, that's okay. That's a yellow light food, but it's still not as good as actual brown rice. So same thing with some of these new pastas out there. There's these bean pastas, which are cool and they're great. They could be part of a healthy program, but again, it's best to eat the beans in their whole form. Breads, so like sprouted breads, Ezekiel breads, those are okay. Those can be part of the program, but again, whatever that bread was made out of, it's better to have that intact whole grain in its whole form. Now, the red light foods. These are things we completely need to cut out if you want to truly reverse fatty liver. So Dairy products, eggs, red and white meats, fish and shellfish, these are all gone. Oils, and we mean it, oils of any kind, whether that's olive oil, sesame seed oil, avocado oil, doesn't matter. These are the most refined foods on the planet, nothing but pure fat. It's not going to help your case when trying to reverse fatty liver or insulin resistance. Refined sugars, obviously those are no good. Pastries and breads, I mean, that's a bunch of fat and sugar all into one processed food. Those are a disaster, so those are in the red light category. Okay, so what do these foods look like? I'm telling you, these meals are delicious. Delicious, satisfying, colorful, nutritious. I mean, look at the screen here. You got like a bean stew in the upper right there. You got a bunch of fruit, greens. This food is tasty and amazing. And as you all know, we are very friendly, fruit friendly at Mastering Diabetes. You can truly eat an abundance of fruit. And the key is to enjoy that in its whole form. And even if it's a, quote unquote, higher glycemic food, when you eat that with other vegetables and non-starchy vegetables and greens, it doesn't become such a big issue. So fruits are a big part of this program.
Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but maybe, 2 months ago or so, we gave a webinar about amla, okay, Indian gooseberries, the magical wonder berry that nobody ever talks about. And in that webinar, we talked about the benefits of consuming amla on a daily basis for, because it's the world's highest antioxidant containing food. And it's got some very dramatic and measurable effects on blood glucose and cholesterol. So in that webinar, we talked about the fact that when you consume amla on a daily basis, which is the equivalent of, I kid you not, 1 gram of amla per day, which is, I think it's like a quarter of a berry, something like, it's just like a tiny, tiny amount. You can end up dropping your LDL cholesterol in a very short period of time. So, some studies have shown that basically over the course of 21 days, your LDL cholesterol can start out in elevated numbers right here, approximately 110 to 120, and within 3 weeks drop all the way down to between 60 and 120. So this is a very significant drop. I think it was an average drop of about 40% in 3 weeks, which no cholesterol medication can do. This is just mind-boggling. It also increases HDL concentrations, which is the good cholesterol. So same thing, over 21 days, you start out with HDL concentrations approximately 50, and you end up with HDL concentrations that are sometimes as high as 80. So the average here is about 60, 65. As far as triglycerides are concerned, elevated triglycerides right here within a 3-week period started somewhere about 250 to 260 on average, come all the way down to as low as 134. This average right here is about 160, 170. So you see a over 100-point drop in triglyceride values in the same 21-day period. And when researchers first saw this, they started to think about amla as being a real player in this metabolic disease game. Okay, so other researchers have gone on to say, well, okay, how does amla compare against statin medication? Because we know statins can reverse or reduce your high cholesterol, and amla can do it, but how do they work head to head? So the way that this paper was done was that they took 60 people living with hyperlipidemia, which is basically elevated fatty acids, and they split them up into 2 groups. So the group 1 had 40 people who were taking the amla capsule. And this is half of a gram of amla. I'm talking a tiny amount. So 40 patients took a half a gram of amla per day. And then 20 patients were given a simvastatin capsule. Simvastatin is just a type of statin medication. Okay. So over the course of time, they basically followed them for 42 days, which is 6 weeks. So the question is, what happened? Okay. So in black, you see simvastatin, and in white, you see amla. So total cholesterol went down in both groups equivalently. LDL cholesterol went down in both groups equivalently. HDL cholesterol went up in both groups approximately the same. It looks like simvastatin was a little bit more effective. The only way that simvastatin won is because it decreased VLDL concentration and triglycerides. So you might look at this and you might think to yourself like, all right, well, amla did pretty well, but it didn't do as well as the statin medication. And you're right, it didn't do as well. But remember the screen that I showed you before. In the long term, amla has zero long-term complications. In the long term, statin medications have an entire list of complications, and they increase your risk for diabetes. So you ask me, cost-benefit analysis, I would say I would take Amla in a heartbeat because it's much more effective in the long term. Okay, here's another paper. They took glimepiride, which is a commonly prescribed drug, oral medication for dropping fasting blood glucose. In red, patients with elevated fasting blood glucose who were in the type 2 diabetes range took glimepiride, and over the course of 3 weeks were able to drop their fasting glucose right here into the sub 100 safe zone. Patients were fed either 3 grams of Amla, 2 grams of Amla, or 1 gram of Amla per day. And all 3 of them were able to drop their fasting glucose into the safe zone. And all 3 of them seemed to function approximately equivalently. 3 grams is obviously a little bit more powerful than 2 or 1. But the fact of the matter is all 3 dosages worked. Okay. Now, again, this is within a 3-week period. This is a short period of time to get such a dramatic drop in blood glucose, especially from a plant that is naturally occurring. So when it comes to reversing fatty liver, there's 2 things to think about. Number one, first and foremost, it is so important. I cannot state this more. I cannot overstate this. Number one, consistency, consistency, consistency. Turn yourself into a robot. Do the same thing every single day. Okay. Be incredibly consistent in the food that you're putting into your mouth. Okay. Now, people ask me all the time, they say, well, can I have a cheat day? Am I allowed to have a cheat day? And I say, no, there's no such thing as a cheat day. Because if you're having a cheat day and you're eating chocolate chip cookies, what that means is that, number one, you don't like the food that you're supposed to be eating. Okay, so you maybe haven't worked very hard at creating a sustainable diet that you actually do enjoy. And number two, it's getting in the way of your consistency, and that's going to have an untold effect on the health of your liver. So consistency is very important in the game of reversing fatty liver. And then number two, patience is also very important. It seems to be much easier to reverse insulin resistance in your muscle than it is to reverse insulin resistance in your liver. Why? I don't exactly know the answer to that question. But patients can, people with diabetes find it easier to drop their fasting glucose. And let me put it this way. It's easy to get changes in your blood glucose when you follow a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet. But changes that happen in the short term, sometimes they might take a lot longer to unveil in the long term as far as your liver health is concerned. So you could drop your glucose, which means that the health of your liver and the health of your muscle is improving. But sometimes it takes a little while longer for your cholesterol to respond. And it takes a little while longer for your triglycerides to respond. And it takes a little while longer for your liver enzymes to respond. Okay? Again, your liver is a hard-working, really, really hard-working organ. So because it's doing so much work, because it's there trying to keep you alive and keep you functioning at full capacity, please be patient. Okay? Reversing fatty liver is not something that happens over the course of 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. Sometimes it can take upwards of 6 months to a year. Sometimes it can take a year and a half to reverse fatty liver, depending on the extent of damage. So please be very consistent and please be very patient in your approach. And when you do that, over the course of time, you can transform the health of your liver.
Okay. So like Cyrus was saying throughout this lecture, so what do you got to do to reverse fatty liver? Number one, you have to stop eating the foods that are causing the problem and eat foods that can heal. So that's low-fat, plant-based, whole foods. As you can see in this picture, a bunch of colorful fruits. That is step one. You have to fix the diet. You can't get around that. Now, we've talked a lot about amla. I mean, this stuff is powerful. I mean, you add that plus low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition, and the healing impact is profound. But they work well together. You can't just take the amla and still keep doing what's causing the problem. So you got to do both together, and you get powerful, powerful results. So more about amla here. As you can see on the screen here, this is a very, very powerful product here. Cyrus, do you want to talk a little more about this?
Yeah, sure. So what we did is we created. Let me show you this. So we created Umla Green, which is basically the product that you see on the right. The problem with Umla, the reason why we created this product in the first place, is because Umla tastes like crap. It is very, very hard to ingest. If you went and you found a gooseberry out in the wild and it's grown mainly in India, and you put it into your mouth, you might be able to stomach it, but it's so sour that it makes you gag. Okay, so the question is, well, how can you get it in your body in a way that doesn't make you gag? So we basically worked really hard to try and find a way to make it palatable. So we mixed it with some oolong dark green tea, and we got a really, really, really high quality source of Umla, and we were able to put this thing together, and we created a product that actually tastes very good, and it's a tea. So what you do is you take a scooper that's inside of the jar, and then you mix it with water, and then you end up just creating a tea. You drink the tea, and then you get Umla into you, without much pomp and circumstance. There's no Umla tea on the market. We were the first people to make it, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people. Some people don't love the taste, and that's okay. But if the overwhelming majority of people seem to really enjoy it, and it's a very, very effective. It's a very effective addition to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, like Robbie was just saying.
So let's look at what's happened to some people who are in our program who started taking this. I mean, look at the screen. I mean, take time to read that, guys. I mean, that is powerful. So this woman's husband didn't make any dietary changes, which we're not really recommending, but saw an impact already. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible how much it works. And when you put both together, it's next level. Yeah, so the trick here is that he's basically, what she's saying is that he won't dive into the program 100%. He's basically like making small changes. Now, that's okay. That's fine. But he's only made small changes and just added Umla Green to his diet. And his fasting blood glucose went from, 150 to 160 all the way down to 113. So it dropped by, let's call it 30 to 40 points in 5 days. 5 days. That quick. Here we go. We got another one. So it's the same person. She got excited. She starts taking it. Look at what happens. Amazing numbers. Amazing. Yep. Very short period of time. Here we go. Another person. Significantly dropped and blood pressure dropped. Both were stuck. And this, what we call Umla here, it's like plant medicine. It's like, it's true. Like you go to the doctor, like you take a pill, like you expect the pill to work. It's like a pharmaceutical drug. It's probably it's going to reduce my numbers. Is it going to make me healthier? I don't know. But like this is plant medicine that actually works, but it's from the plants and doesn't have negative side effects. It's unbelievable. Here we go, type 2 for over 10 years. Fasting blood sugar past, and there we go, right there. Now below 100. It works. And this, I actually used it with ice water and a splash of natural juice. So that's a good way to consume it and make it taste even better. So basically what we're saying, we'll say it one more time, is that, Umla is effective. We know that. It works. It's gold. But if you consume Umla without changing your diet, then you're setting yourself up for disaster. If instead you can consume a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet according to the way that we prescribe it in the Mastering Diabetes program, and you add Umla Green, this combination right here, I kid you not, is the most effective fatty liver reversal protocol that I have ever seen. I literally have not seen any other protocol that is as effective. Both of them work independently of each other. You add the two of them together, they have a synergistic effect, which is additive. What that means is that one plus the other is greater than the sum of the parts. So this right here is the way to reverse fatty liver. If you're serious about reversing fatty liver, this right here is going to get you to do that, and it's very effective. So the product is incredibly affordable. So there's different sizes that you can purchase. If you want to save money, you can get the bigger container, and that reduces the size of the serving. So a small container, $24.95. But you guys on the webinar tonight, we're gonna have a way to give you a special 20% discount. But the ability to do that is limited, so you got to pay attention. Now the big bottle, that one is $49.95, but you get 90 servings. So as you can see, it reduces the cost of serving. But those two prices are the regular price. Because you're on this webinar, you get the chance to save 20%. So the way to do that is you're going to have to go to this page and enter your email so we can send you the discount code. Okay? So
you guys see an offer on your screen right now. If you click on that image, it'll take you to a page where you can then enter your email address. If you enter your email address, we will send you a coupon code that is redeemable for 20% off. And well, the trick is that there's only 100. We can only get our hands on 100 coupon codes. That's all that we were able to actually create. So we can only give this discount to the first 100 people. And just like you guys have probably seen, there's almost 1,100 people that registered for this webinar. So I would love to be able to give out coupon codes to every single one of you guys, but we just can't do it right now. So if you're serious about getting this, put your name on that email list now, and we'll send you a coupon code ASAP.
So just click the button, takes you to a page. All the page asks you for is enter your email, and then we'll be able to send you the discount code. And in addition, so making this even better, it's unbelievable, but guys, we're going to give you our Mastering Diabetes online summit for free. So the information in this summit is just unbelievable. I mean, we had so much fun creating this, but the feedback that we have gotten from so many people who participated and how just this information changed their life, changed their perspective, things started to click, they got the tips they needed to take action. The summit is amazing. So you get the discount code, you make the purchase, then you email us your receipt. And then once you email us your receipt, we'll email you how to get into this course, and you get it for life. You're getting lifetime access. You can download the videos, you can download the audio files, listen to them while you're on an airplane. You're not connected to the internet, that's okay because it's downloaded onto your phone. You own it. You can listen to it while you're driving, while you're making food, while you're doing laundry. There's audio files and video files. So we want to make this information as accessible as possible. And that's a bonus just for purchasing the Amla Green. So it's quite a deal. Get them, again, 20% off on both sizes. So either one of the size, and you get the summit. And there's only 100 codes for the discount. So hope you guys are entering your email ASAP.
Yep. So this is it right here. So if you are interested in getting involved and starting, we have a lot of people who are already using Amla Green, and it seems like people really like it. If you have not tried it, this is your opportunity to get into it. Again, 20% off of either size. Plus, we'll give you the Mastering Diabetes Summit for free, which is what, like triple the value, triple the value. If you're already not in our program, we obviously recommend joining our program as well, because for $29 a month, you can get the most effective fatty liver reversal strategy in the world. So let's go to the questions now and see what kind of questions you guys have.
Let's do it. I'll do a quick question right here that came in on the top of the box before we get to our little spreadsheet. But can you overdose on Amla, Cyrus?
That's a good question. Can you overdose on Amla? I want to say sure, of course. I mean, I think the answer is yes. That you can overdose on anything. You can overdose on quinoa. You can overdose on bananas, right? So I would say what we've done is we've made it so that every dose of Amla gives you approximately 4 grams. And so we dosed it such that, if you just drank 1 glass of tea per day, that would give you a very generous quantity, and that would have a very strong effect. Some people choose to drink 2 cups per day, and I think they're seeing more benefit. They're seeing reduced cholesterol, reduced triglycerides, and reduced blood glucose. So what I would say is at the maximum, drink 2 glasses per day. But is it possible that you could overdose? I'm pretty sure the answer is yes.
Yeah, let's try not to overdose. We got Lyle here who just wrote, it works. Following the program and drinking the tea, and results have been fantastic. So the results work. There's no need to part of our big teaching in our coaching program is slow and steady wins the race. So trying to just consume the whole bottle in a day or something is just not going to do anything. We want to see consistent, steady benefit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So there's some people who are on YouTube that cannot access the cannot put their name on the email list. Okay. So,
are there people on YouTube? That's interesting. I didn't even know this was going on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. So if you are on YouTube and you are trying to put your name on the email list and you haven't been able to, you can't see the offer, simply write an email to team@masteringdiabetes.org, TEAM@masteringdiabetes.org, and just say, interested in Amla 20% off, and we will put your name on that list. Okay. But please put your name on the list. If you can do that, we prefer that method. And if you can't for whatever reason, then write us an email. Okay. Now, another thing that I see some other questions here about the fact that Amla tastes like crap. And like we talked about, if you go to Amazon right now, there's a whole bunch of products for Amla, right? There's powders, there's there's like lipstick, there's hair oil. It's all over the place, right? We created Amla Green. That's it. We have nothing to do with any of the other products that you'll see on Amazon. So I just want to clarify here. Our product tastes the best of any Amla product that we've ever sampled ourselves, and we've tried a lot of them. A lot of these products, like, you have to just mask the flavor. You got to dump it into a soup, or you got to put it into a smoothie and just try and get as much sweetness around it so that it doesn't taste bad. And our tea can be drank by itself. I have one every single day. I love it. A lot of our clients love it, and my family loves it. So just know, if you're concerned about it tasting like junk, then please don't worry about that, because it actually tastes quite good. Okay, what other questions we got?
Let's see here. Heather, if you could send me the spreadsheet, So I'm just going to go off what's going on in this box. So somebody's asking, some people having weight loss issues on high carb diets. So, I'm going to take that question. If somebody is having trouble losing weight on what you're saying here is a high carb diet, the bottom line is we got to see more details. So that's what we do in our coaching program. Our $29 a month coaching program is we use technology to our advantage and figure out exactly what you're eating and figure out where the problem is. And 9 times out of 10, we can see the blatant errors, and we can make some adjustments, and we can get you right back on track. And in some tough cases, the 1 out of 10 where, they actually are doing exactly as we're teaching, and it's their weight's not going off as quickly as they want, or it's staying kind of steady, then we go to the next level. We make some more tweaks on the calorie density. And you know what? You don't necessarily have unlimited amounts of brown rice. Instead you tweak that, have a little bit less brown rice, more, non-starchy vegetables at that meal. Or when you're eating your fruit meals, maybe the fruit meals don't consist of lots of dates and bananas, but maybe the fruit meals are more like berries and peaches or something. Those are lower calorie density. So we play around with it, and we work with people in our group. Our team works with them on a day-by-day basis to solve that problem. So that's the best thing I can say is, honestly, guys, if you're like, I'm trying this and I really want to lose weight, hit a plateau, I highly suggest just investing $29, join us for 30 days, see how it goes, and you're going to love it, and you're going to stay a lot longer than just a month.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. So there's a bunch of questions here that I want to get to. So there's some questions here about how is fatty liver diagnosed? What blood tests, are necessary in order to really figure out if you have fatty liver in the first place? Okay. So write this down if you have a pen and paper with you. I would test a number of things. Number one, I would get your lipid panel. So your lipid panel contains 4 numbers: your total cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol, and your triglycerides, okay? So if you go to your doctor and you say, "Doc, I want a fasting lipid panel," then they know what that means. So that's number one, that's required. Number 2, fasting blood glucose. Okay, that's definitely required. Number 3, liver enzymes. The 2 liver enzymes of concern are called AST and ALT. I'll repeat that, AST, ALT. Once you get all 3 of those together, okay, your fasting lipid panel, your fasting blood glucose, and your AST and ALT, that right there will tell you, it'll be a pretty good indicator as to, with what state your liver is in. In my experience, neither one of those tests by themselves are definitive. So you can, if you just get your ALT and AST measured, but you don't measure your fasting lipid panel or your fasting blood glucose, you can't really draw any conclusions. Okay, so get all three of those measured. If you have any questions about your lab work, you can just send our team an email and we can try and help you interpret it. We're not doctors, not physicians. We cannot diagnose anything, but we can give you a little bit of strategy here. Point being is that if your liver enzymes are elevated and or your fasting lipid panel and or your fasting glucose, as a whole, this collection of tests is really effective at helping you understand how much damage your liver may be experiencing. And then one other test that seems to be quite helpful for people who are worried about inflammation is you get something called a CRP, which stands for C-reactive protein. And a test, the specific test that you want to take is called high sensitivity CRP. Okay, so high sensitivity CRP basically is a marker of total body inflammation. And the higher that number is, the more inflammation is present in your body. The lower that number is, the less inflammation there is in your body. So CRP is manufactured by your liver. And if you get your CRP level measured as well, that'll basically tell you if there's inflammation in your body, which your liver is trying to quench.
Love it. Okay. Somebody, I don't know if we answered this or not, but somebody says, do you consider a 40-30-30 diet a low carbohydrate diet? So,
yes.
I mean, let's see. That's got to be at least 30% of calories from fat. I don't know. I mean, this is a lot of ways to slice it. I mean, if the low carbohydrate world, if you really, really want to do it like perfectly, as far as like the keto people and some of those websites that are showing the most amazing results, they're talking about no more than 30 grams of total carbohydrate per day. So that's like the standard. So how do you define it as?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. In my professional opinion, anything less than 60% of carbohydrate in your diet is a low carbohydrate diet. Okay, so anything less than 60% is low carbohydrate. So technically speaking, 40% carbohydrate is low carbohydrate. Number two, more importantly than what I call it a low carbohydrate diet, is I would call that a high fat diet. That's a high fat, high protein diet. And that has been shown over and over and over again by research to increase your risk for all-cause mortality. So 40-30-30 is a disaster. That is very close to the standard American diet. That has been shown time and time and time again to lead to metabolic disasters. So if you have measured yourself at a 40-30-30, I strongly recommend changing it and doing it quickly.
There we go. Excellent. Somebody says, when taking amla, should you stop taking statin medication? Okay.
When taking amla, should I stop taking? Okay. So we're in a dicey position here because we're not physicians, and therefore, we technically can't tell you whether it's, reducing medication is smart or not smart. That being said, if I were in your position, here's what I would do. The way to determine whether or not it's smart to stop taking any medication, whether it's statins, whether it's metformin, whether it's a blood pressure medication, is I would start taking amla. I would start using it on a daily basis. I would then monitor my cholesterol levels very closely. I would go to the doctor and I would get a fasting lipid panel after about a month. Okay, and I would say, what has happened to my cholesterol levels over the past month? If you're finding that your cholesterol is dropping, it's likely that the amla is causing that drop. So then at that point, I would ask my doctor. I would say, hey, doctor, this is what I'm doing. Bring them the product. This is what I'm doing. This is the information I have on it. This is what we know to be true about amla. This is why my cholesterol is dropping. Do you suggest that getting off of statin medication is safe? And if your doctor says yes, then go for it. Oftentimes, you might be in a situation where your doctor is probably going to say, no, there's no way. You have type 2 diabetes. You have prediabetes. Never get off of statin. Never. In that situation, if you don't feel comfortable with that, either find a new doctor or decide what you're going to do independently, maybe consult someone else. But point being is that what I would do is I would start using AMLA, check my fasting lipid panel, and then make a decision based off of that.
Terrific. Okay.
So on that same tip, there's one more question here from Yosh. Yosh is in our coaching program. What's up, buddy? It's good to see you here. He basically says, are the statins that I'm taking causing high fasting blood glucose? Yosh, I'm going to say they could be. They absolutely could be, because again, we saw that from those meta-analyses, those 2 papers, that statin medications can increase your risk for type 2 diabetes, which means that they're increasing your level of insulin resistance. That's one of the nasty side effects of them. So if you haven't already started taking Amla Green, I would start doing that. And then again, check your fasting lipid panel after about a month and see if it's actually causing a decrease in your lipids, and see if it's actually decreasing your fasting cholesterol. I'm sorry, your fasting glucose. It's well worth a shot, and there are many people who have seen dramatic positive results already for sure.
Okay, let's see what else we got here.
You see this one from Deepika about, yep, that one right there.
Okay, so low carb claim the human body is not designed to run on glucose and glucose toxic. I mean, you know, it's
read the question out loud.
The question is, I have a question which has got me super confused. The low carb people claim that the human body is not designed to run on glucose, and glucose is toxic. They claim humans are meant to run on ketones. Please address this big question: ketones or glucose?
Okay, so here's the deal. The world of the ketogenic diets are hilarious to me, actually. They're hilarious because it's like a whole bunch of pseudoscience, a whole bunch of pop science that does not have a very strong evidence backing. So the people in the ketogenic world will tell you that carbohydrates are your enemy, and that you should never eat carbohydrates because carbohydrates are sugar, and sugar will make you fat, and sugar will spike your insulin use. All of that is a true statement if and only if you are operating in a high-fat environment. I will state that again. Carbohydrates will spike your blood glucose and spike your insulin if and only if you are operating in a high-fat environment. What that means is that if the fat content of your diet is high, or if the fat content of your blood is high, if either one of those is true, then eating carbohydrates can be a pain in the butt. If instead of operating in a high-fat environment, you operate in a low-fat environment, and you drop the fat content of your diet, you drop the fat content of your blood, you drop the fat content of your liver, you drop the fat content of your muscle, then and only then can you metabolize carbohydrates without it causing a spike in your blood glucose or your insulin. So the people in the ketogenic world are brainwashed into believing that carbohydrates are super dangerous for human health because, think about it, they are operating in a high-fat environment. So if you are on a ketogenic diet, then de facto, you can't eat carbohydrates. It's just not going to work. Your blood glucose is going to spike every single time you put a potato in your mouth. Your glucose is going to spike every single time you eat a banana. Okay? So there are plenty of people following ketogenic diets where they basically are, carbohydrates are the plague to them. Because the second they put anything carbohydrate rich into their mouth, their glucose goes through the roof. What they don't understand is that it's actually the fat and protein rich foods that are causing that problem. They always point the finger at the banana or the potato or the bowl of quinoa or the persimmon, and they say, hey, you're the problem, when in reality, it's not the problem. The problem is that they caused insulin resistance from every other food in their diet. And the effect is that they cannot eat carbohydrate. Okay, so that's why they pass around all this propaganda about the fact that glucose is bad for you and carbohydrates are bad for you. But from a research perspective, it's a load of garbage. Now, another thing is that they'll tell you that ketones are the magic bullet to your health. Okay, ketones are not the magic bullet to your health. Ketones are an emergency backup fuel that your liver manufactures in times of limited carbohydrate supply. So I'll say that one more time. Ketones are an emergency backup fuel that your liver manufactures in times of limited carbohydrate supply. So when you're on a low carbohydrate diet, you end up manufacturing ketone bodies specifically to protect your brain from losing fuel, from starvation. So your liver, again, is synthesizing ketone bodies to protect your brain. And when you're operating on in a ketogenic economy and you're eating a low carbohydrate diet and you're cranking out a bunch of ketones all day long every day, that process can become dangerous over the course of time. A human body was never designed to run that way. This is literally an emergency backup system that was designed to protect your brain. And truth be told, we don't know, as a research community, we do not know the long-term consequences of ketogenic diets. We do not know what's going to happen to your brain health 20 years down the road. We do not know what's going to happen to your thyroid gland 20 years down the road. We do not know what's going to happen to your muscle tissue 20 years down the road after following a ketogenic diet. If you want to be a guinea pig, then go for it, be my guest. But if I were in your position, I would stay as far away from a ketogenic diet as possible, because the biology is backwards, the biology is incomplete, and the biology honestly doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's so great. And there's so many ways to slice this. I mean, like Sarah was saying, it's a little crazy. But at the end of the day, it's almost like, just ask yourself, like, what do you want to accomplish? Like, what's your health goal? What are you trying to, what's the reason you want that goal? Like, you want to live long for your grandchildren. You want to, look better for your partner, whatever it is. Like what's your goal? And why not get there with these amazing, delicious foods we're showing you? Like, it works. Like, I mean, you get to choose. I mean, you want to eat like tiny portions of bacon and eggs, or do you want to eat, fruit for breakfast as much as you want? Like, you get to decide. Like, anyways. All right. Next thing here. How long does it take for the liver to replenish itself?
How long does it take for the liver? Okay. So technically speaking, your liver takes approximately, I'm trying to remember. I think liver cells repair themselves. Liver cells replace themselves once every 4 months, if I'm not mistaken. So you do the math on that one. I think the answer is it takes approximately 6.5 to 7 years for your liver to completely regenerate itself. That doesn't mean that it takes 6.5 or 7 years to reverse fatty liver at all. What it means is that your entire liver, every single cell in your liver will create a daughter cell within a span of 7 years. But as far as fatty liver is concerned, as far as the reversal process of fatty liver is concerned, the answer is it can be as little as 3 months, or the answer is it could be as much as 2 years, and it depends on the amount of damage that's already occurred. And again, the damage is caused by high cholesterol, high protein, high fat foods. If you've eaten those for a long period of time, you run significant risk for fatty liver. There's also some genetic markers that can predispose you to high cholesterol and high fasting blood glucose. And if those are the case, then that's working against you. But on average, if I had to, take an educated guess here, I would say look for somewhere between 6 and 9 months. 6 and 9 months to fully reverse fatty liver, and you're cruising at that point.
Okay, we got a lot of questions. Things are still coming in, so we're going to go through these quick. What are your thoughts of ideal protein? I think we might have answered this already, but the bottom line is, on a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet, if you consume enough calories from whole foods, you get enough protein. It's literally that simple. And I mean, you could sit there, if you're concerned, you could run blood tests to see what your protein looks like. You could go to the gym and perform and see if you're improving physically. It's very easy to objectively be confident that you're getting enough protein. And you can also look up the numbers in nutrition software. So that's that one. Cyrus, does your liver shrink back to normal eventually?
Yes, 100%. When you reverse fatty liver, your liver becomes less enlarged. It'll definitely go back to a much more normal size over the course of time. And remember, it's the accumulation of excess fatty acids that causes the liver enlargement in the first place.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't get a screenshot put in the presentation. It was a last minute thing, but there's a member of our group. His name is Scott, and he has reversed his fatty liver in a very short period of time because he's just 100% compliant and all on it. And he went and got a sonogram, so he has the before and the after, and his liver has already returned to normal size. So absolutely yes. Okay, somebody's saying the difference between high and low glycemic foods. So we actually just did an interview today with Matt Letterman from Forks Over Knives, talked about this topic. And really the whole glycemic index and all that stuff is just blown out of proportion. It's not that big of a deal. When you're truly eating a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet, you get there's only a few fruits that are even high anyways. And if you want to eat those fruits, we teach you how to eat them with other foods. So the index doesn't, if grapes are a high glycemic fruit and you eat grapes by themselves, okay, yeah, that's one thing. But if you're eating grapes with, you have like a grape salad, or you snack on it with some carrots and some cucumbers and a hummus dip or something like that, then it's a whole different story. The glycemic game, it doesn't even matter. So it's just blown out of proportion. Don't worry about it. Eat low-fat, plant-based whole foods and enjoy the fruits that you want to enjoy. It's about creating a lifestyle that's sustainable and that you enjoy. So if you love grapes, we will find a way for you to enjoy grapes and not have a problem with your blood glucose or reversing fatty liver. Bottom line. Okay, let's see here. Can a healthy type 1 diabetic get his liver to secrete ketones without eating a high-fat diet? I'm not sure I understand that one, Cyrus.
What's the question? Say it again.
Can a healthy type 1 diabetic get his liver to secrete ketones without eating a high-fat diet?
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what the intent of that question is. I guess the question is, like, can you go into ketogenesis without eating a high-fat diet? And
I'm not sure why you'd want your liver to secrete ketones.
Exactly. The ketogenesis is not something to aspire to. Ketogenesis, again, is a physiologically non-adaptive state. It's literally it's a state that your liver goes into in order to protect itself, in order to protect your brain from starvation. So, unfortunately, the ketogenic world has basically tried to convince a lot of people that ketogenesis is something that's actually beneficial and that it'll preserve brain health and muscle and liver health in the long term. And I'm telling you guys, this stuff is just like it's voodoo what they're doing. And it's unfortunately I'm not trying to come across as though I'm like talking smack about anyone in particular, but I do want you guys to understand that there's a strong difference between evidence-based research and pseudoscience, and this is pure pseudoscience, complete science. And
somebody was asking about how there's a very popular book about the ketogenic diet for Alzheimer's. There's also a plant-based book that's recently come out as well. So I don't know if you want to address that real quick, Cyrus.
Which book?
Remember that guy we did the podcast with? He sent us the review on it. But anyways, the point is that he was worried about the fact that ketones are supposed to be good for Alzheimer's.
Oh, yeah. Kirk Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ketogenic diets were originally developed as a therapy for epilepsy. And what they found is that kids who were experiencing epilepsy benefited significantly from a low carbohydrate diet, from a very low carbohydrate diet. So they would take these epileptic kids, they would put them on a ketogenic diet, and all of a sudden they would get less seizures. So their incidence went way down. And they were like, cool, looks like we found a solution for, epilepsy. And then from that point onwards, they studied it more. And then somehow they found out that it was improving lipids and it was improving glucose. And so then they said, okay, well, maybe this is a diabetes therapy. And then boom, now you have yourself a diet which is happens to have some short-term effects that are measurable, that has now been turned into a fad to convince people to eat more meat and more cheese. That's pretty much what it is.
Okay. Somebody said, let's see. Go back to the little spreadsheet here. Somebody says, what do you think of vitamins? So when we encourage people to get all the nutrition from low-fat, plant-based whole foods. So that's like step number one. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one in particular is the synergy that happens when you eat whole foods. Like the vitamins and the minerals and how they work together is something beyond our comprehension. We will never understand it. It's just incredible. Trillions of cells doing trillions of actions, interacting every single second, every single day. It's mind-boggling. So an isolated vitamin or mineral or in a pill is just not the same. Now, there are certain cases where it's called for, and that's various conditions, and something's not working, and somebody's sick for whatever reason. Sometimes you want to, again, use some vitamins, use some plant medicine in certain situations. That happens. But the first line of defense is fixing the diet, and there's a lot of people in our culture right now taking supplements or spending a lot of money on supplements, yet they're eating a terrible diet. And that's just backwards. The supplements are not going to compensate for a bad diet. We do recommend that people take B12. So that's a supplement that we recommend. And hopefully that is helpful. Okay. Somebody is asking, like, how do you know the stage? I think they're asking, like, how do you know what stage of fatty liver you have?
Yeah, how do you know what stage of fatty liver you have? You can basically get liver imaging. I think you can either get an ultrasound or you can get, I think an MRI might be able to diagnose it. But through some kind of imaging techniques, they can actually take a look at the level of scarring inside of your tissue. I'm sorry, inside of your liver. You can actually see white circles or dark circles, which represent either calcified areas or excess fatty deposits. And depending on the amount of scarring can kind of determine whether you're at liver, fatty liver, fibrosis, or liver cirrhosis.
Cool. All right, this is a good one. Will drinking amla green tea at bedtime help me with dawn phenomenon blood glucose spikes?
It doesn't matter what time of the day you drink it. Just drink it at least once a day and be consistent about it. If you have it in the morning, fine. If you have it in the middle of the day, fine. If you have it in the evening, fine. Literally just get it into your body and have it circulating every single day, and the time of the day is less relevant.
Yeah, and here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it's worth a chance. I mean, I think we've seen it happen, but, I mean, why not give it a 30-day trial and just see what happens? It's a pretty limited risk. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know how it goes. Let's see here. Does amla reduce overall mortality?
So amla, I don't know the answer to that question. The fact of the matter is, I don't think there's any studies to show that, if you take amla, you're gonna reduce mortality. But, by logical extension, amla improves fasting lipids. I'm sorry, amla improves lipids. Amla improves glucose. And we know from plenty of peer-reviewed evidence that better improved fasting lipids and improved fasting glucose leads to better outcomes in the long term. So, indirectly, I would say, yeah, amla can significantly improve your metabolic health and therefore decrease your risk for chronic disease, period.
Cool. All right, somebody asked a really good question. They're saying, hey, I'm transitioning from a paleo diet to your diet. Is there a period of risk during the transition period when there's currently too much fat in my system, so there's an overlap, high carbs and fatty environment? This is a very good question. I love it. Do you want to answer it, Cyrus, or do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so this question is asking, basically this person is transitioning from a paleo diet to our diet.
Okay.
And they're saying, is there a risk during the transition period when there's currently too much fat in my system and there's an overlap of high carbs and a fatty environment?
Phenomenal question. The answer is yes. Is there a risk? No, there's no risk. But what could happen is that your blood glucose could go up temporarily and then it will come back down. So you can slice it in one of two ways. You can either say, I don't really care about temporary elevations in blood glucose, and that's likely to last you maybe like 1 week or 2 weeks at the most. Or you could basically say, no, I do care about temporary elevations in my blood glucose. I want to be more conservative, in which case I would take a two-step approach. The first step is I would integrate more non-starchy vegetables and legumes. That would be the base of my diet. Okay. Then over the course of a week to 2 weeks, I would slightly increase my intake of fruit and starchy vegetables. So you start with foods that are low glycemic, and then you transition to higher and higher and higher glycemic foods over the course of about a 1 to 2 week long period. And by doing that, you can actually limit the amount of blood glucose elevations that occur during this overlap phase. And you are probably going to be pretty pleasantly surprised by how quickly your blood glucose responds. Just as like a frame of reference here, at our retreats, when we do in-person retreats, which we're going to be hopefully putting another one on sometime in the next few months, people come to us and they've been, eating a standard American diet or a low carbohydrate diet, and then we transition them immediately, with no questions asked, onto a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet that is full of fruits and full of potatoes and full of squash. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared." And within 4 days, we have a near perfect track record of getting significant improvements in blood glucose and reduced oral medication and reduced insulin use in 4 days. So you're like, most people think like, oh, well, I've been eating this way for years. It's going to take a long time for me to start to see improved blood glucose. And that's actually not a true statement at all. It happens much quicker than you might believe.
Totally. I think there's some questions that have come in the chat box. And I think Kylie and Heather have answered some of these, but just in case somebody wasn't reading, we'll try and answer them real quick. So somebody says, how about bread and flour products and pancakes? So those are going to be meals that we put in the yellow light category. Those are processed foods. So whatever the bread was made out of, whatever the flour was originally, we're suggesting that it's best to eat that in its intact whole form. Same with pancakes. So pancakes are made out of flour. It's processed. That's not good for trying to get your blood glucose under control. Somebody's asking about nutritional yeast. Can I use fortified nutritional yeast? Now, this is, again, part of our coaching program is, we give you guys information and you can make your own choices. Some people in our program eat nutritional yeast, no problem. Some people have looked into it and said, you know what, it's basically like MSG and has a toxic effect and people get a headache from it or something like that. So you get to decide. Nutritional yeast is a personal decision. It's not really the end of the world one way or the other in regards to reversing insulin resistance or reversing fatty liver. It's a personal choice. Let's see. What else do we have? I'm loving the participation here. This is great, guys. People staying, asking questions. These are good questions. Let's see. What do high liver enzyme numbers indicate? Especially with good lipid and blood glucose. Okay,
so that's a great question. High liver enzyme biomarkers can basically indicate, it's basically an indicator of liver damage. And, these enzymes get elevated in states where your liver is experiencing metabolic distress. Now, the reason why, if you just get your AST and ALT measured, it's not definitive is because there's many things that can elevate your AST and ALT. If you are an alcoholic, you're likely to have elevated AST and ALT. If you overuse aspirin, that can happen. If you have a condition called hemochromatosis, which is iron overload, your liver enzymes can go up. If you have hepatitis, your liver enzymes can go up. If you have the flu, your liver enzymes can go up. If you're struggling from a common virus, a cold, your liver enzymes can go up. If you have a bacterial infection, your liver enzymes can go up. So there's many reasons why that would happen, but in combination with your lipid panel and your fasting glucose, that is a way to get kind of a comprehensive view of what your liver is actually doing. And then that is a good indicator of whether you would benefit from really giving your liver some TLC.
Love it. Okay, quick question. This is from Yosh. How does time of exercise affect fasting blood glucose numbers? I mean, there's a lot of ways. I mean, I'll let Cyrus add some more to this, but the first thought I have is time doesn't necessarily mean everything. I mean, you could go and walk for at a very slow pace and never get your breath up for a long time, or you can work out, significantly hard for a short period of time. Do you want to add anything to that, Cyrus?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because it sounds to me like Yosh is trying to reduce his fasting blood glucose. And, if you do exercise in the morning, it can have a glucose lowering effect throughout the rest of the day and the next day. If you exercise in the evening, sometimes that can elevate your blood glucose, sometimes it can bring it down. So Yosh, I think the answer to your question, the way I would answer it is I would say it requires some experimentation because there's a certain amount of bioindividuality from person to person. So some people will find that they'll exercise in the evening and then they'll wake up with a high fasting glucose. Some people will exercise in the evening and they'll wake up with a low fasting glucose. And you can explain both of them using simple biology. So let's work on this together because I know you're already in the coaching program and I know you're working super hard. And so what we can do is try and find a way, whether the time of your exercise actually matters or if it's the type of exercise that actually matters. Because cardiovascular exercise and resistance exercise have different effects. And I can work with you closely to see if we can manipulate that to your advantage so that we can decrease your fasting glucose and make sure that you have a strategy for success.
Love it. Okay, somebody says, how many nuts is it okay to eat on your diet? So the simple way we do it is we teach people to use nutrition software. Again, you don't have to use it forever, but it's a learning experience. And we say a maximum of 30 grams of total fat per day. So you'll see that there's fat in all the food that you eat. And then, how you can fit in a little bit of nuts and seeds, you'll see through the software. Also, another way to look at it is 15% maximum calories from fat. I don't know if Cyrus, if you want to give like a little portion size, whether it's an ounce or half an ounce or something like that.
Yeah, I don't actually know the ounce conversion, but basically just like you're saying, monitor your diet, make sure your overall fat intake is usually under 30 grams per day. And then, also make sure that your total fat content is approximately 15% or maybe a little bit lower than that. And then that's how many nuts you can eat. It depends, the answer is it kind of depends on what the rest of your diet is. If you're eating, very small amounts of food, then you probably can't withstand very many nuts. If you're eating much larger amounts of food, you can probably withstand a little bit more nuts. So, under 30 grams or under 15%.
Cool. I feel like there's a lot of. Do you see the chat box, Cyrus? There's a lot more questions continuing to come
in. No, I can't because my screen is locked out on that.
Okay, and I think Callie's answering most of these, and Heather as well. So I want to look at the spreadsheet. Maybe the spreadsheet is any questions that have not been answered. So here we go. Let's see. Hope you guys know about Dr. Jason Fung. He promotes fasting and low carb. He has great following and great results. What do you say about that? I mean, again, like we have no desire to have pick any fights with any particular people or anything like that. And honestly, anybody who goes out there and they do a low carbohydrate diet, like they really take the effort to follow that and they do the fasting and they get great results, like kudos to them, like credit. Like we have so much more in common than we don't have in common. So anybody who's doing that, like high fives, congratulations. We agree to disagree on a lot of points. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, one position we'll always state over and over again is like any result that people are getting with any of these ketogenic diets and fasting and all that, like we can get the exact same results here with no other side effects, with no, like, where's the research suggesting that eating more fruits and vegetables and potatoes and squashes and beans and like, where is the research even suggesting that stuff is going to cause long-term problems?
Absolutely.
Then you go look at the journals, how many papers are putting into question the consumption of eggs and bacon? And I mean, it's just like the titles of nutrition papers that are linking those foods to health problems is through the roof. So I don't, like, it's just like you get to choose, and we're here to support people on how to do the what we think is the healthiest version, and that's it. We're not picking fights. We're not going after anybody. We're just, Cyrus is here stating the science, and that's it.
And to follow up on that, Dr. Jason Fung, he's brilliant. He's a very, very smart man. And so he has found that, intermittent fasting is a very effective technique for weight loss, for reversing insulin resistance, for improving glucose, and for, reversing diabetes as a whole. So it's great. Where his logic falls apart is he is an advocate of a low carbohydrate diet because, again, he's in the camp where he says carbohydrates are your enemy, and anytime you eat something that contains glucose, that's gonna cause a spike in insulin. The biology just doesn't check out. Trust me, I've spent so many thousands of hours reading this stuff. If you're in a high-fat environment, then eating carbohydrates is impossible. If you're in a low-fat environment, eating carbohydrates is very possible. I wish Jason Fung understood this, because if he did and he actually saw the results of people following a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet and saw the results of people in our coaching program, he might think differently. I don't know. He might. But, from the fasting perspective, he's brilliant. He's a genius. But from the dietary perspective, his logic does not work, just does not check out.
Okay, somebody's saying researchers at the University of Copenhagen suggest that gut bacteria imbalance may raise the risk of developing insulin resistance. Have you seen research like this? And the answer is absolutely yes. And many of our summit speakers talk about this in our summit, which you get free access to when purchasing AMLA. So I'll say yes, and let Cyrus say anything else he wants to say on that topic.
Yeah, actually, so there's a lot of research going into the gut microbiome and how it's affected by diabetes or how it's causational in diabetes. We're putting on another Mastering Diabetes online summit in February of next year. We have multiple speakers. We got Ron Weiss, we got Robin Chutkan, and we got there was one other person who was talking about this the other day about the effect of an altered gut microbiome. And it is fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating how there's a cause and effect relationship. So yeah, it's actually Brenda Davis, number one. She's going to talk about this. Ron Weiss is going to talk about this, and Robin Chutkan. And so the three of them are all experts on this. So I'm going to defer to them because they know a little bit more about it than we do. But the fact of the matter is that when you're eating foods that are low in fiber and high in fat and protein, they also come laden with antibiotics from the dairy industry and antibiotics from the meat industry. And then they also can accelerate the development of this stuff called TMA, trimethylamine. And trimethylamine is a nasty, nasty toxic compound which your microbes in your gut cause. They create it. They manufacture it. And when microbes in your gut are manufacturing TMA in response to animal-based foods, TMA then turns into TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, and that stuff is potently atherogenic, meaning that it actually causes atherosclerosis. So the way that it works is that you eat animal-based products, you end up developing a microbiome that secretes TMA constitutively. TMA oxidizes to TMAO. TMAO then goes and destroys your cardiovascular system, leading to atherosclerosis. That's a huge problem. It can also cause kidney failure. And so the combination of the two of those is super dangerous. And if I were you, I would try and stay away as far away from that as possible.
Okay, beautiful. So this is an important question right here. Somebody says, how is type 1 diagnosed? My daughter has been told that she is all of a sudden type 1. She is 35 years old, non-diabetic prior to this. So the best thing to do in this situation is hopefully the medical team knows that it's smart to get two tests. Number one is a C-peptide test, and number two is called a diabetes antibody panel. And those are regular tests that the doctors should be very capable of running. And if they run those tests, the doctors themselves, and should be very easy to decide what's going on. So that's our recommendation, unless Cyrus wants to add anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you know the answer, if you get both of those tests taken, we can, they're definitive. They'll tell you, whether or not you have an autoimmune reaction, and then whether or not you have any insulin production. And based off of just those two questions, you can definitively tell exactly what kind of diabetes you have. And based off of that, you know exactly what the treatment protocol is, right? So, there's many different ways to slice it, and you can come up with either type 1 or type 1.5 or prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And based off of the results of that, we can help you figure it out. I'm going to write an article that specifically says how to determine what type of diabetes you have and what to do about it, because it's very, very specific. And those two tests will get you the answer every time.
Totally. Okay, can you say more about taking aspirin and the effect on the liver? I have to take 325 milligrams aspirin daily due to past blood clots.
Okay, so I don't consider myself to be an aspirin expert, so I might have to defer on that question. Overuse of aspirin. So again, you can get liver enzyme elevation as a result of chronic aspirin use. If you have, so aspirin is basically used to sort of like, it's a blood thinner, dilutes your blood. And as a result of that, it's effective for people who have had previous blood clots. But rather than using aspirin, consuming a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet where you're limiting the total fat and protein intake of your diet is incredibly effective for decreasing the viscosity of your blood. Okay, so let's think about what that means. The viscosity is basically a way of calculating friction in your blood. Okay, so suppose you had two liquids. You had water and you have honey. Okay, water, you pour it out, it's free flowing. It can easily move from one container to the next. Honey, you pour it upside down, shake it, it moves slowly. It's super lethargic in order to get from one container to the next. Why? Because honey is more viscous. Okay, so liquids that are more viscous, they move slower, and there's more internal friction that's preventing them from moving. Okay, when you consume a high-fat and/or high-protein diet, your blood becomes more viscous. It starts to resemble a more honey-like nature and less of a water-like nature. That's a problem, because when your blood becomes more viscous, which actually happens within hours of consuming a single high-fat meal, as a result of that, the assault that happens inside of your liver and your brain and your kidneys and your muscles becomes very apparent. Your blood was never designed to be a viscous liquid in the first place. And so if it's becoming viscous and it's becoming very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like very thick, then your need for something like aspirin goes up, because aspirin can start to take this honey-like viscous liquid and make it a little bit more fluid. But you know what else does that is not eating so much fat and not eating so much protein. So by limiting your fat and protein intake and by pouring in vitamins and minerals and fiber and water and antioxidants, you can actually make your blood much less viscous. And especially if you're doing that for breakfast and lunch and dinner on repeat every single day, over and over and over and over and over again, the viscosity of your blood goes way down. And then your need for aspirin goes way down. And as a result of that, your liver can actually decrease its AST and ALT production and resume to a much more normal and sort of healthful state of being.
Excellent. Okay, somebody says Roy Taylor study reverse type 2 diabetes with calorie restriction. Any thoughts?
Sure. You can absolutely, sure. If you calorie restrict yourself, if you intermittent fast all day long, you can absolutely reverse type 2 diabetes that way. This is not new. We've known this for 85 years, right? But I'm giving you another option. Okay, I'm saying, listen, if you want to reverse type 2 diabetes, stop eating food. Just do it. Just stop eating food. You can reverse type 2 diabetes, no question. But you don't have to go to that extreme. That's my point. Okay, you don't have to do that. Okay, if you want to live a more normal life, and if you don't necessarily want to have to go into this restricted state of being, what you can do is adopt a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet and incorporate some intermittent fasting every once in a while. And as a result of that, you can also achieve the same thing. You can also reverse insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. You're just going to do it at a slightly slower rate. But that's okay, because it's not a race, right? So if you want to fast, you want to calorie restrict, go for it. I'm not going to stop you from that. It's very effective. But my point is that you don't have to do that.
Totally. Okay. What causes a diabetic foot infection, and can it be healed?
Okay, diabetic foot infection can happen from a number of things. So simple way to get a diabetic foot infection is you end up, you can rub your foot along, you can get cut with a piece of glass, or you can, rub it on concrete and you end up with a surface level scratch. And then because you have elevated blood glucose, because your glucose is uncontrolled, your ability to heal that infection, it goes way down because your immune system gets suppressed. And so as a result of that, an otherwise harmful scratch or an otherwise harmful, what's the word I'm looking for? Like incision on your skin can become infected because your immune system can't heal it properly. And then it becomes more infected, and then it becomes more infected. And then they get to a certain point where now you might end up with, necrotic tissue on your foot. And then you might end up with the need for a leg amputation. That happens all the time with people with diabetes. Okay. So having uncontrolled blood glucose suppresses your immune system. And when you suppress your immune system, you can't heal. You just can't heal from, colds and viruses and scratches and cuts, and you get headaches and you feel terrible, right? So anything that compromises your immune system increases your risk for infection, whether that infection either comes from, a bacteria or a virus into your nasal cavity and into your face and your eyes, or whether it comes from rubbing your foot against a piece of glass and getting cut and then ending up with an actual infection on your skin.
Excellent. Okay, I think we got 2 more questions. I think we'll probably call it a night. So somebody says, we'll do this one last. So the other one is, what about alcohol consumption on the Mastering Diabetes plan?
Okay, alcohol consumption. Here's what I would say. We're not trying to turn you guys into, ascetics. You don't have to become a monk. If you choose not to drink any alcohol, that would be the gold standard. Okay. If you choose to drink 0 glasses of alcohol per week, go for it. That's effectively what I do, and that's what a lot of people do, and it works beautifully. It's a personal choice. If you said to me, hey, Cyrus, I like to have a glass of wine every so often, or I want to have a beer, that's okay, right? So what I would recommend is try and minimize your alcohol intake to absolutely less than 4 drinks per week. And if you can get to 0 drinks per week, then do that, right? But, once you're going beyond 4 drinks per week, then you're running the risk of damaging your liver and causing ancillary problems down the road.
Cool. And then somebody asked, I'll just add to that yes, the gold standard is 0. Personally, I've never consumed any alcohol in my entire life, not a single drink, and I'm going to keep it that way. So somebody asked, can you overeat on beans and lentils? Can you eat too many of those? You can eat too much of anything. You can drink too much water. Anything is possible to do that, of course. Now, it's very difficult, though. Most people, if you sit down and you have a really healthy whole food meal, it's just nothing but whole beans and a sauce or something and some lettuce, or you have a nice meal, it's very, very difficult because there's so much water and so much fiber in the meal. It's what we're designed to eat. So then the satiety factors goes off at the proper amount, and you don't eat too much. So I suggest enjoying it in abundance. We don't know the details, but if you have details, and you're in our coaching program and you're trying to lose weight and you're struggling, then that's where we can figure it out and see what's going on and suggest some adjustments. So that's it. Okay, guys, this has been wonderful. Appreciate you guys tuning in and asking good questions, and I hope everybody takes action and uses this information to change their life.
Absolutely.
And don't forget about the special sale. Again, because you're on this webinar, you get the opportunity to save 20% and get the summit for free. It's a $97 value. Just click that link to enter your email so then we can get you the code. And it's going to work for 100 people. We have 100 redeemable opportunities to save 20%. So that's it, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for attending, guys. It was really fun. And we will see you next time.